This is the Snodgrass podcast. I'm Brett Snodgrass. I got a great guest for you guys today, Mr. John Erickson with Eden Business Concepts. You guys are not going to want to miss that. Go over to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the Snodgrass channel, and click on that bell so you get all the notifications every single week. We got some amazing videos coming out every week to you guys. Beyond the podcast, we're doing the podcast, we're doing some other creative videos. It's going to get crazy here pretty soon, so stay tuned. Today, I got John Erickson, who is the founder of Eden Business Concepts LLC. They work with emerging leaders and business owners, and he talks today about the 3 root motivations of every business leader. And you guys are going to want to nail this down, because if you can become aware of one of these and who you are, it is going to help you, your personal life, your business, your culture, your team, everything that you are, if you can listen to what John says about the motivation of your heart. This is Mr. John Erickson. What's going on, John?
Hey, it's great to be with you this morning, Brett.
You too. Thanks so much for being on the Snodgrass podcast. Always appreciate you, your humble heart, everything that you guys are doing with emerging business leaders and business owners and coaching them up to have healthy businesses and healthy lives, right?
Yeah.
So super excited, but I always like to start off the show with a light question, and that is, who is John Erickson?
That's a good question. I guess maybe I'd look at it in 3 different ways. You know, obviously I'm a person of faith, so I am a child of God, and I've been told that I've been adopted 3 times. I was adopted when I was about 18 months old by a Croatian mother and a father who had been adopted, given away actually in the Depression. So that adoption. Grew up with parents that loved me, but, never met don't even have any desire to know my biological parents. Don't even know who they are. But then I was adopted when I was 18 years old by my father, God. And I became a believer when I was 18 at Purdue University. And so I was adopted again. And then through the course of time, I ended up, ironically, my mother was a Croatian. Her parents had immigrated from Croatia. And through my contacts and connections in life, I eventually ended up going to Croatia as part of my work in ministry. And I was adopted by the Croatian people that were there, by my brothers and sisters. So I like to say I've been adopted 3 times.
Wow.
And so it's a lot of stories in there, but that's who I am. I'm a business owner. And when it comes to what I do, I guess I like to say I'm kind of a combination of Gandalf and Dr. Phil. So I have the wizardry of being able to take chaos and turn it into clarity. And I do that by, like Dr. Phil, talking about how your heart works.
I like that. That's quite the combination. Gandalf and Dr. Phil. I'm just trying to picture that right now. If we could have a drawing.
Yeah. You imagine thou shalt not pass.
Maybe we'll have our
and how's that working out for you?
Maybe we'll have our video editor put a combination of that, Dr. Phil and Gandalf, so do that. Man, it's quite the story, quite the history. Adopted, different cultures, and obviously giving your life to Christ, which is amazing. And I have that story as well. A lot of our listeners do too. And you really help business leaders and emerging business leaders, business owners, people that are entrepreneurs, and you help them not with, it is with business, but you don't start there. So let's talk about that.
Well, a business leader will often come to us with what they believe to be is a business challenge. Something is not working. The company is not growing as well. Maybe we work a lot with family businesses. And so maybe there's a relationship issue inside the company between the father and the sons, or the mother and the daughters, or a lot of those. So it can be relational. But often they'll come with what they believe to be a business issue. How can we move our company forward to either be more successful, to get over a problem, to reorganize in a way that makes more sense, to make a business decision? That'll be how they come, because that's their felt need. But what we often will look at is we see your felt need here. We see either the chaos, or we see the decision you need to make. We see the issue you're confronting. But we often will just peel back those first few layers, and eventually we will get down to what the really root issues are that are driving either the fear or the anxiety or the chaos or the conflict, or maybe just the lack of knowledge or clarity you have around how to make a decision, more often than not, it's going to be an issue that has to deal with how your heart is working. And so the theme of kind of my life, a book I've written, a number of things I do, is you will either flounder or flourish in all your relationships based on how well you know your own heart. And so eventually, not too long in the conversation, I'm going to begin getting down here.
Yes, yes, and they're speaking my language right now. And you actually wrote a book about this, The Three Paths Out of Paradise, and it really dives into these root motivations of your heart. So I want to dive into that. I mean, you mentioned a couple already, but let's just talk about the first one. What is one root motivation of a business leader's heart?
Well, one of them is respect. The three, respect, value, and approval, are our three primary motivations. They come out of a biblical understanding of how our heart works. You find them in the Garden of Eden, the three root sins: pride, idolatry, and unbelief. They come out of a passage in Jeremiah when Jeremiah was asked by God. It's one of these funny stories where God says, go do something strange and I want to make a point. So he says, go put on some underwear and then take it off and bury it and then go find the underwear again. And the whole thing is about Israel, God's people, ignoring their relationship with God because of their pride, idolatry, and unbelief. And when you walk all the way through into the New Testament, you see Jesus coming out of the wilderness after 40 days of fasting, and the enemy comes to him and tempts him around those very three things: pride, idolatry, and unbelief. They are the root sins, the root motivations that drive all of human beings, and they're not psychological. They're not part of our DISC assessment. They're not part of our, MMPI. We're not an ENTJ. This is really at a very root level of how we are made because of what happened in the Garden of Eden. So that massive failure built one of these into us. And so for a leader, if you understand that and you understand what your root motivation is. So for example, for me, I am very powerfully in that first category. My root sin is pride, and my entitlement to respect and my entitlement to not be a failure drives everything that I do and think about. I hate failure more than I hate Brussels sprouts. I hate failure more than I hate Satan. I mean, I hate failure. And so if I get a whiff of failure in something I'm doing or about to do, or in you or in anything, man, I'm going to go crazy. I mean, over the course of my life, I've had to understand that and begin to moderate it and begin to drop my entitlement to not fail and be successful, and learn how to operate in a way that trusts that the Spirit knows what he's doing, and move that need for respect to a powerful sense of wisdom that allows all that stuff that I do know to flow into other people's lives for their benefit. So respect moves with the Spirit to wisdom. We'll talk about the other two as we move along here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're speaking the same language too, because I fear failure as well. Whenever I do something, I almost get really obsessed with it. It's like, I want to live this balanced life, and I want to be a good, man of God, a good husband, good father, good business person. But it sounds like if I get really obsessed with something, I want to succeed at it so much that everything else just goes out the window. And I fail like at all these different things. So, and I think you were mentioning one business leader too, like that was his root motivation. And so if that is your root motivation, let's just say, someone out there right now, like, oh, I get it. I hate to fail too. I have to succeed. What do you do about that?
Well, we talk about this. I talk about this a lot with business leaders because, you can see they've got this big red failure button on their chest, and people are punching it all the time. And it comes out in big ways, like I don't want to fail on a project, or or I don't want to, fail to take care of my kids well, or love my wife properly. But it just seeps down into the very essence of who we are, so that sometimes we can't even sense how the future would look from God's perspective, because all we see is the potential to fail and the need not to. But what the antithesis of that, as I said, is wisdom. But the way you get from respect and this idea of failure to wisdom is you recognize, first of all, that I'm not entitled to succeed. I'm not entitled to be competent. I would like to be competent. I would like to be the smartest guy in the room, but I'm not always. I punch, man, I will punch for clarity, because clarity is the weapon of the pride-based person. If I have clarity, then I will, I feel like I can conquer anything. But if I don't have clarity, man, get me in a car, turn me around and get me lost. I have a visceral problem with not knowing where I am, and whether it's in a car or whether it's in a relationship. So my wife, she still comes to me, Debbie, she'll say, John, you're just not going to get clarity on this one. I did not ask all the questions on the call that you want. So, you're just going to have to live with that. And so the way we begin to move out of this place is, and I use that word entitlement very carefully, because we have an inner need, very powerful need, and it becomes an entitlement, a right almost, to not fail. And it colors everything. And so the first thing we have to do is we literally have to drop every conversation, even just coming onto this podcast this morning. Brett, I had to say, this isn't about me.
Yeah.
This is not about my being seen as whatever I think I need to be seen as. It's, I can drop this entitlement I have it to be competent or be right. Oh, that's another big one with this, because we're right. It's not that we think we're right. It's that we are right, and that other people just need to figure that out. There's all the other opinions out there, and then there's the right one.
Yeah.
The one I have. So we just have to get to the place where we say, wait a minute, I need to drop all that and let the Spirit flow through this and say, wait a minute, you have some wisdom for this person that's in front of me here. What is that? What is that? What's that look like? How do they become the person who's the competent one? How do they become the one who is the successful one? Yeah. How do they become the one who is the respected one? And the reason we do that, and if you were to look through the book, there's I do put some biblical interludes in between the chapters, and one of them is from Philippians chapter 2, when you look at Jesus, and he's hanging up there on the cross, and if anybody deserved respect, or if anybody deserved value, if anybody deserved approval, love, it was him. Yeah. And he chose to drop his entitlement to those things and hang up there so that we could become who we need to become.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it. We have to say, it's not me who needs to be the success here. It's you.
Yeah. No, I love that. And do you think, is it always a constant fight? I mean, it's always every day. You have to remember who, number one, I think it starts with God. It starts with Christ and knowing and trying to be more like him. But does it ever get easier? Because, for me too, like I'm doing podcasts, same thing. I'm doing video content, doing YouTube channels, things like that. And I know, like, my message is, my ultimate desire is to spread the kingdom. Like, I feel like I have experience, I have a message. I feel like I can relate to a lot of people because I've done some different things. But again, sometimes it always boils back to, how can more people see me? Because I don't know, it starts to do that. Does it ever get a little bit easier?
Short answer, no. Because there's just always going to be that next thing that we have to be good at.
Yeah.
That next thing we have to be competent at.
Yeah.
Because it is our root motivation. But what does change, Brett, over the course of time is one, we become more aware of it. You know how so often when it comes to a problem or comes to a situation, it's knowledge that it's there. First of all, just acknowledging that it's a reality is the first step.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that I am someone who really hates failure, and really that's going to be a big emotional block for me sometimes in making a good decision or staying in a relationship or choosing to humble myself. No, it's always there. I just had just the other day, I had my business partner and I, came to a different situation, and I said we were in a difficult relationship situation with something else, and I said something to he made a comment, and I was all in text. By the way, just a little caveat here: don't ever use text for anything but logistics. Don't try to do relationship stuff with texting. It never works out well. But in any case, so he said something in a text, and then I said something in a text. Of course, he misinterpreted what I said, and I misinterpreted what he said, and blah, it turned into a mess. And we've been known each other for 30 years, and so it's not like we obviously we die for each other, but it just gets that way. And finally, I just had to say, you know what? I just need to say I'm sorry. I just apologized for misinterpreting what he said, and that was not my intention. Mm-hmm. I didn't blame anybody. I just said it happened because I had an emotional response to something, and that wasn't what I meant. So please forgive me. Your relationship with me is more important than this, and I'm praying for you. And I left it there. But man, I tell you what, Brad, I was right. In all the different ways about this, I was the one that had the right answer. Mm-hmm. The temptation for me to write a 5-paragraph explanation of all the ways I was right and all the ways he wasn't right and all the ways my perspective was the best one and his was not. The temptation for me to write a 5-paragraph text explaining all that to him was very, very powerful. Yeah. And it took everything I had to grab the spirit and say, no, write 3 sentences, apologize, and shut up. But I tell you what, that's not easy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's move to the next one. So we talk about the fear of failure. That's a big one, and pride, huge. What about respect? So is that similar? I mean, what is that? The need? I mean, I think as man, there's a lot of books out there, especially men, like we need respect. What's that mean?
Well, respect is part of that first root sin. It's that same one. Okay. Respect is the primary entitlement for a pride-based person is respect. Mm. Everything drives out of my need for respect. And if I get a whiff that you don't respect me, man, I'm not, it's going to be really hard for me to be in a relationship with you. Yeah. So that's the first piece. Pride, the need for respect, is that that fear of failure is the mark of that, being right, needing clarity. All of that fits in that first category. Okay. The second one is this need for value. It's the root sin of idolatry, and that one is the one where we vacuum all the value out of the room. We vacuum all the attention out of the room. Mm. We are the ones who need to be worshiped, not you, not God. I need to be worshiped. Mm-hmm. And if you're not worshiping me and you're not paying attention to me and you're not affirming me and you're not giving me words of affirmation and you're not lifting me up and I don't feel like you really think I'm the most important one around, bad things are going to happen to you in our relationship.
Man, I feel like I'm all these.
So we have manifestations of all of them, in our lives, but one of them is the one that when that button when in pain. So that's why we ask the question, what hurts more? Mm. What hurts more? Because what hurts more, to be disrespected, to be devalued, or to be disapproved? Yeah. To be disliked. And so one of those, like, okay, I don't really care if you don't like me. I mean, it might bother me a little bit for a couple of seconds, but that's not really my thing. Yeah. And I don't really need to be worshiped by you because I already know I'm better than you. And so that's fine. My issue is that you better respect me. Mm. So it's one that's going to get pushed. And so the second one, this one on value, is powerful because you see this in entertainers and worship leader. Oh my gosh. I don't think
Worship
I
leaders
know a
mean
worship leader that is
pastors.
not. Yeah. And I don't think most pastors are pride based.
Yeah.
Some are the third one,
Gotcha.
the fear based one. But most pastors, to get into that role, you're probably pride based.
Mm-hmm.
But almost every worship leader I've ever met is in that second one. He or she loves to, when the light pops on and the guitar starts, they're in their element, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had guys that I've mentored, young men that were really excellent musicians, and I had a guy live with me for a while, and excellent musician and sweet man. He knew he was very empathetic, and he could just read people's emotions, and very, very good guy. Love the Lord. And he'd lead his band, and he could get them all to play exactly the right things with the right nuances, and the keyboard and the drummer. And I mean, he had it all laid out perfect. I mean, he really was good at it. But man, he'd stand in the front in the dark room, and the lights would pop on, and it was like a transformation happened.
Mm-hmm.
He went from sweet person taking care of his band to, this is me, spotlight right here. And I watched it happen. I was like, dude, he had to stop leading worship for a while. I said he couldn't do it.
Yeah. Wow. I think, God like humbles people. And I think sometimes I can get like that as well. Like I said, I kind of hit a lot of these. So I do some public speaking, give some presentations, things like that. But sometimes it's like, oh, I need a little bit of that affirmation afterwards. And, it's funny. Like sometimes I would rather have people come up and say, oh, that was such an amazing talk, great presentation, instead of like not hearing anything and they just go do what I say and change people's lives. It's crazy. Sometimes I need that validation.
Yeah.
So
it
I
is.
can get that.
Although I think in me, I like the validation too. I think the nuance there, Brett, is between these two is that for me, and maybe for you, the affirmation affirms that we were competent, that we didn't fail.
Yeah, true.
For a value-based person, and the antithesis, of course, to value is inspiration. So we drop our entitlement to be worshiped. We drop our entitlement to suck all the attention out of the room, to vacuum the value toward us. And we let the Spirit channel all of that inspiration to other people, and we inspire others to become who they were designed by God to be. Mm-hmm. And so when we're being inspirations of value in other people, the Spirit can move in very powerful ways through that. And that's really that transition that happens. And so I stop vacuuming value and I start blowing value. I start blowing wind into other people's sails. That's what really moves the kingdom forward. Because in all of this, ultimately, the issue is for a business leader that's a believer, for a person who works in a church, for whatever your role is, ultimately, the reason you suck air is so that you can move the kingdom forward, so that you bring redemption, so you can overcome the mess that happened at the fall. And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. So we've talked about pride, we've talked about value, and again, most of it is both of those is like, oh, it's all about me. It's like if you can, put that on other people, inspire other people, want other people to succeed, that's where it kind of turns around, but you got to fight against that. What about the third one?
So you have pride, idolatry. So pride needs respect. Idolatry, very much needs value, be valued. Bring me the value. The third one is the root sin is unbelief. And that one is a very fear-based. All of them have different kinds of fears, but the third one is very fear-based. And, it's really about approval. I need you to like me. I need you to approve me. Ultimately, the thing I'm afraid of losing is being connected, is being abandoned in some way. And so in order to avoid being abandoned by you, I'm going to do whatever it takes for you to like me. I'm going to avoid conflict like the plague, comfort and being pain-free are my entitlements. If I'm an unbelief-based person, I don't believe God is going to take care of me or take care of you. So that means I need to do it. I need to take care of you. I need to take care of me. I need to remove pain. I need to remove discomfort. I need to remove anything bad from your life. So you see this in the mothering sometimes, that people do of people, the over care that's really not necessary. You see it in people who avoid conflicts like the plague. Don't even talk to me. If you're going to argue with me, I'm going to walk away. Stop talking. And you see it in business leaders most powerfully in decision making. And if I see a leader who is paralyzed by decision making, then I know I'm dealing with this approval-based, fear-based person, this unbelief-based person. And I know that what's happening with that person is why decisions are so hard is because they look forward and they project on discomfort and pain forward into the outcome. And every outcome that they could possibly decide on, all of them have pain and discomfort associated with them. Yeah. They don't have an outcome that doesn't have pain. And so they really struggle. They sometimes literally will just stop and be frozen because they can't decide which pain they want to cause. And so,
paralysis by analysis.
It is. It's paralysis. Yeah. It's paralysis of analysis. It's just paralysis of projection.
Yeah.
And so and my wife can be like that. Dennis, my business partner, now he's obviously very mature and he's worked through this, but there are still times when that need for approval, that need to not be abandoned is very, very high. And if there's some sense that if I take this action or I cause you this pain or I make you uncomfortable or I fight with you in an argument and you might leave. You might abandon me. You might leave me alone. And that's the absolute worst thing that can happen to an unbelief-based person. Yeah. Now, the opposite of that, the antithesis, is being a peacemaker. Unbelief-based people typically are amazing peacemakers. They carry the peace of Jesus with them. And so they can come into a situation, immediately sense all the pain and discomfort, and they can lower the noise, and they can say, it's okay. Jesus is here. He's going to take care of us. This is going to be okay. No matter what, there's nothing that can happen right now that's going to remove you from God's presence.
Yes.
So you stop.
Yes. I love that. I feel like, again, I was kind of always known as the people pleaser, and that I relate to that as well. I don't like conflict. I shut down and I'm quiet when conflict arises. I'm not a yeller, but, and sometimes I'm called the peacemaker, and I can relate to that as well. So we got the three things. We got idolatry, the pride, the need for value, and then we have this last one, which is unbelief. And so you kind of start there. You work on a business leader's heart, and they start to become aware of possibly which one they are. And then, it sounds like you've always been a curious person, and you help business leaders develop and just become more mature in their development, right? So they're aware of this, and kind of take us through like what happens when a business leader is like, oh my gosh, that's it, I know. And then you just kind of work through that. And then what happens to this person, their life? And
well, I mean, I can even just take myself as an example, because I've walked through learning how to in the nonprofit space. I worked for the State Department for a while, which is, a cauldron of pride and idolatry, and then went into seminary, another cauldron of pride and idolatry.
No, there's no pride in seminary.
And eventually got a doctorate, and had all the competence that I needed, and I was the top of my game, and I was great. I was pastoring the church in the city of Chicago. I had led a prayer ministry. I was a professor at a seminary. I was there, man. I was at the top of my game. I was in my early 40s, late 30s, early 40s, and got called to a church in Lafayette, Indiana out of the blue. Didn't want to come here, but my wife thought it would be a great idea. She was ready for a change. So, okay. We started off in Lafayette, Indiana, got married here, and finished school here, went around the world, literally ended up back in Lafayette, Indiana. Don't know why, 2005. called unanimously to a large church in the city. Okay, let's get this done. Bring it, bring all your leadership skills, bring all of the talent you have, all your education. Let's just get this done. Church wants to grow. Let's make it happen. Everybody was on board except 6 elders. And 4 months into the process of starting this new church, having moved here with my family, the elders got buyer's remorse and said, this isn't going to work for us.
Wow.
And asked me to leave.
Wow.
Boom. Everything that I had known, been educated for, thought I had experience with, everything in my life hit a brick wall. My identity collapsed. I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. And my failure, I had a panel of failure buttons and lights going off in me. And it was devastating to feel the shame that poured over my life to say, you are a failure. Nothing about what you've learned, done, or been up to this point matters. Man, it took 10 years to get through that path.
Wow.
But in that path of that failure, it was the most amazing miracle that God has done in my life, other than save me, because he showed me how my heart works. He showed me the power of my failure, of my need for respect, and how in every relationship to begin to say, you don't have to be the right one. You don't have to not fail. You don't have to prove anything here. You can bring wisdom without pride. Wow. And that's what he wanted to show me over the course of this time. Well, that's what every leader has to come to. Every leader has to recognize, first of all, this is who I am. I am a pride-based person. Failure is not a possibility for me, but it is. So let's figure that out. Let's just stop worrying about if you fail, and let's start talking about when you fail. Okay?
Yeah.
This isn't about what if. This is about even if. What if I fail? No. Even if you fail, or even when you fail, this is how God is going to move you through that process and give you what you need. So that's the first thing you have to get to is, let's change our perspective on how we move. The second thing we have to do is then, where does this apply for us? Well, it's going to apply, first of all, to our relationships, because relationships are the key to everything we do. We are in life in relationships. So how is my need and entitlement to respect affecting my relationships? How is it keeping me from being intimate with my wife? How is it keeping me from being intimate with my children? How is it keeping me from being intimate and careful with the people that I work with? How is it keeping me from treating my employees as people who I understand their hearts? So I've got to go through every relationship I'm in, and I have to ask God to show me how to move from a place of demanding your respect to providing you God's wisdom. And it's relationship by relationship. Once I've kind of figured that out, then I can come every day to a place of, okay, now I have to lead a team. For example, if I'm a business owner or I'm an entrepreneur, I've got to figure out how to develop a client base and treat my clients in a certain way, given who I am. What's that look like for me?
Yeah.
So this works out. I just have to take it into every one of the places of my life. And then from that place, it comes to, okay, now I have an organization to build. I have some strategic planning that needs to happen. I've got some metrics that need to be developed. I've got a culture in my business that needs to be thought through. In all of the places, the strategy, the processes, the metrics, the culture that I have to build my company with, every one of those I have to think about, not just from my perspective, but from the perspective of all of the other people who it affects. And it stops being about me and it starts being about that.
Yeah. Wow, that was amazing wisdom, and just wrote that down too. Just wisdom without pride, and that's exactly, what I want to do with my life. And I was going to ask you just how do you transfer that into other people on the team? So it kind of starts with you. You become aware of yourself, and you start to focus on each relationship, your kids, your wife. And I was just even thinking about with my wife. So we're married almost 9 years now, and I think that I've been operating a little bit out of that failure. Because, when we were dating, when we were firstly married, first 2-3 years of marriage, we were very, eating up spiritual food, praying together, reading together, devotionals together. And I feel like I've gotten a little bit away from that. And I feel like why can't I get back to that? And I think a lot of it is because I feel like I failed, and maybe I've failed her. And it's hard for me to get back to that. So let's just talk about your team. Like how do you transfer that to the culture of your team? Obviously, culture is big. In order to have freedom in business, you have to have a healthy culture. So you as the business owner, you start to become aware of this, what motivates you. But obviously there's things in your team that motivates all of them, right? And they're all motivated by one of these things. So how do you get that transferred to your team?
Well, culture is about behaviors. Ultimately, your culture is built on the behaviors we do every day. And those behaviors are built on our perspectives. We take all the actions we take in life based on three things: our needs, our expectations, our needs, and our perceptions. All the emotions we have in any given situation are going to be because of one of those things: an expectation that was met or not met, a need that was met or not met, and a perception that was skewed off of true somewhere. And so to be able to build out a culture, in a healthy culture in an organization, you have to think about the behaviors that people are doing every day and then what's motivating those behaviors. And so as I'm building out a team, first of all, I want to know, what are the root motivations of everybody on this team? Mm-hmm. And then do I have the right people in the right places? So if I have, for example, a person whose job it is every day to make decisions, all the time, they have to make decisions. We're going to put this much money in this place. We're going to put these many people in this place. These many people are going to be assigned to this job here. If they're constantly in a place where they're making decisions that are going to affect how other people do their jobs or resources they're going to have for their jobs, I might want to think twice about putting someone who hasn't figured out that they're an unbelief-based person in that job. Mm-hmm. If they haven't figured out that decision-making is hard for them because they don't like to make people uncomfortable, then I may want to consider that, or at least help them understand, that this is going to be tough for you and you're going to have to choose to cause some pain, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I'll just say, this is not the best place to put you. Let's put you over here where you're taking care of people in customer service and you're meeting their needs. And when they call in, you empathize with them and you figure out what's happening with them and you care for them. And let's put someone like me in there who doesn't really care whether you like your, whether today you're going to be more uncomfortable than you were yesterday because the job's a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. Let's just figure out how to get it done. Yeah. Now, not that it needs to be quite that unempathetic, but you see what I'm saying? There's a sense in which knowing who people are is going to help me put them in places where they're going to want and like to do what they're doing. So that starts the process of building that culture. But then it also has to do with how are you responding to the way people interact with you. And so the next piece of the culture that gets dealt with is how do you address conflict? Mm-hmm. And that's the second book I've written, is about, we have a process for how do you walk through conflict in a healthy way. But first of all, just recognizing that when something happens to you that you don't like, to immediately say, wait a minute, my respect button just got pushed here. And I have a choice to say, I don't have to respond out of that. I can wait a second. Yeah. So there's training too in helping people understand how it is that we operate, given that we do know who each of us are. So that culture building piece is is critically important to creating a healthy business.
Yes, definitely. And John, we're starting to run towards the end of the time here, but I just want to kind of hit on, your business too, Eden Business Concepts. You guys really help business leaders. Everything that we talked about, guys, this is what John and his co-founder does with Dennis. This is what you guys help business leaders with. You figure out, what's their root motivation, help build cultures. You also do so many different things. I mean, you've helped with successions and legacy, which is big on my plan. You help with business strategy, but it all just kind of starts here. But talk to us a little bit about, some of the things you guys have been doing over the last few years and what's Eden Business Concepts.
Yeah, so Eden Business Concepts has gotten involved. What happened with this is that, Dennis and I both, we met 30 years ago when we were at Trinity at seminary. And he went the path of of mental health, eventually got a PhD in education around the area of mental health. I went in the direction of leadership development, taught, in the practical theology department for a long time. But the passion that we both built was around the idea of emerging leaders. How do we move the emerging leader to the place where they need to be to launch into their careers to be as effective as they can be and move the kingdom forward as effectively as they can. And so in the process of building out emerging leaders, we recognized that there were some things there's some gaps, in terms of who they were. One is, do they recognize how their heart works? What are their skills that they need to develop in terms of, both in terms of how they manage themselves, how they learn how to lead, what are leadership skills they need, all of these things that get built in. We did that through mentoring and through some different group activities, some teaching classes and providing all kinds of different tools in that process. Well, through that kind of development over about 25 years of working with emerging leaders and all kinds of other nonprofit situations and helping churches and nonprofit organizations transform into what they want based on new requirements they had. I was in Eastern Europe. We built 2 leadership development organizations there in Eastern Europe to bring leaders, to the next step and bring them the skills they need. In the midst of all of that, a couple of years ago, a guy named Brad Leonardson in Indianapolis said, hey, I know you guys are really passionate about building next generation leaders, and I know you've done a lot of this in the nonprofit space. What would it look like for you guys to, he calls it riches upside down, instead of be people who take donations or work with people who take donations from other people? Why don't you take all the stuff you've been doing, focus this on business leaders, because they have the same issues you're dealing with: heart development, good management skills, how they build clarity in their organization to become healthy, all the stuff you're doing. Focus it on business leaders and their businesses. They'll pay you to do that, probably a pretty good amount of money, because they do anyway. It's valuable to them. And so they're getting, multiple times more value out of the amount they're paying you. So why don't you do that? Take what you have, feed your family, and you'll have some to keep working with emerging adults, which is what you really want to be doing. Because, I feel with the emerging adult, I guess I get, emerging leader, I get passionate because, you've got 2 times in your life where it really matters to get things right. Okay. One of them is in kindergarten, and the other one is in your 20s. Well, I can't kindergarten, I can't help you with. If you didn't learn how to share and stand in line and, and speak properly and, use a fork, I can't help you with kindergarten. But what I can do is help you with your 20s. And everything you learn, develop, and figure out, and perspectives you get in your 20s are what you take through your entire rest of your life.
Yeah. The
reason I'm standing here talking to you on this podcast is because of things that I was given and learned in my 20s. So if I can get that right, if I can get your 20s and your early 30s right, man, you're going to have so much more runway to do. So that's kind of where all of this comes from. So what we do with businesses now, and business leaders now is, unfortunately, we're making up for some gaps that they didn't figure out in kindergarten in their 20s. So part of it is that. Part of it is in the area of around conflict or crisis in an organization. So I like to talk about the idea of they're kind of the dumpster fire. We have sometimes people come to you because it's a dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mess. It's on fire, conflict, mess, a tragedy or crisis happened, and they've just got to figure it out. You got to go in, put out the fire, figure out what happened, clean up the mess, and get them back on their feet. Part of it is the second category, which is, well, the dumpster's full, but you're holding the lighter in your hand. And so we're like, let's not throw the lighter into the dumpster. Okay. let's figure out how we can clean this dumpster out before you light it on fire. All right. And then the first category, which is the one we prefer, but we don't get to often, is the dumpster's empty. There's nothing in the dumpster.
Yeah.
Let's not put anything in the dumpster. Let's figure out how to move the dumpster out of the way and do your life and your business and run your organization in a way that doesn't get to one of those other two categories. Yeah. So that's a lot of what we do, is we help companies either navigate mess, potential mess, or not start the mess at all.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes around how healthy businesses are.
And obviously this really rolls over into your personal life as well, right? I mean, obviously if you're having problems in the workplace, you're probably having problems in other areas of your life, and this is going to roll over into other areas. And guys, so your website, John, is EdenBusinessConcepts.com. And so check that out. If you're interested, if you're a business leader, entrepreneur, check it out. And you need some help with this, guys, because like I said, if you are like me and you can relate to one of these root motivations, whether you're dealing with pride and idolatry, value or unbelief, one of those, and need some help working through that, I'm sure John and Dennis would help you with that. And you obviously also have another thing called Convene, which really... I think that sometimes as an entrepreneur business leader, we always feel isolated. And I think Convene takes groups of people that are dealing with some of these same things and puts them together. Talk about that real quick.
Yeah, Convene is an amazing tool. It's an organization that puts together business owners, business leaders, emerging leaders into peer groups and provides them with an opportunity to think through the opportunities and challenges that they have in their businesses as they're growing with a bunch of their peers that are also in the same place. It's facilitated by someone who has some business experience, someone who knows what they're doing, and it also avails you of the entire network of Convene consultants and Convene coaches out there and all the stuff and tools that are available. So it puts you in a community to help you develop your business. You don't have to do it alone. And so just very quickly, this merges very much into one of what Dennis and I are doing to build healthy businesses, because it provides a tool for you to learn how to be healthy together with other leaders. Two things I want you to know about. One is we're starting a group for emerging leaders. It's a brand new pilot program. If you're not the business owner and you're not a key leader in the group, but you really are learning how to be a leader and you really want to be in one of these groups kind of earlier in your career, we have what we're calling an influential leaders Convene group, which is going to be online. And we're starting those. They're going to be 10 to 12 people, meet a couple times a month online and have coaching. We're also starting a group for if you're a small business, an entrepreneur, or you're the key leader of a group. You don't run the business, but you're one of the key leaders in a business, an online group that puts you into a set of peers, again, to help you grow as a leader, integrate your faith in with your work. You talked about how you it's your whole life. It's you're holistic. You're a leader. You lead from your family. You lead from your faith. You don't lead from the fact that you happen to be someone who works in a business.
Yeah. Awesome. Check that out, Convene, guys. Check out John's website, EdenBusinessConcepts.com, if you guys are interested in more information. Thank you so much, John, for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast today. I always like to end every show with a little fun, a little fire round. This is called Fire Round with John. These answers are typically less than a minute long. So as you think about these, less than 60-second answers, got 4 questions for you right now. So number 1, so what type of business leader do you love to work with?
That's easy. I'll work with just about anybody, whatever your skill set is, however much you've learned, whatever your education is, whatever you're struggling with. There's one criteria. and that you have to be teachable.
Mm.
If you're not teachable, I can't work with you. You can be struggling in any other area. As I said, I was a pastor. There isn't anything you've done that I either haven't done myself or haven't counseled somebody who has done it.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be a barrier.
No, I love
the only
that.
barrier is going to be, are you teachable?
Teachable. Love that. Number 2, what does your faith mean to you?
100 years from now, it's not going to really matter what business you ran. It's not going to matter how many grocery carts that you sold. It's not going to matter how many widgets that you created. It's not going to matter what software you developed. 100 years from now, what's going to matter is, did you move people to Jesus? Did you move people into the kingdom? Was your life redemptive? Did you leave a legacy of redemption? Are your great-grandchildren walking with Jesus? So that's what my faith is about. My faith means that I am a redemptive person who moves people into the kingdom.
Wow. That's a good answer. I love that. All right, number 3, best book that you've read recently.
Wow, that's tough, but I'd have to say probably the one I'm working in and have used a lot right now is this one here by Pete Scazzaro, called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. This is probably one of the best tools that you could use if you aren't someone who has paid attention to your heart up to now in your leadership. That is an excellent tool. And we're working through it with our convene groups. I use it a lot with young leaders. And so if I could recommend among all the other stuff I'm reading about Henry Kissinger and China and all kinds of other stuff, Emotionally Healthy Leader.
All right, I'm going to get that one. Sounds good. You guys should too. All right, person whom you would love to meet and chat with.
Ronald Reagan, one of the presidents of the United States, fell down in my arms in the embassy in Iceland. So I've met a lot of cool people, and he's one of them. So I don't really have a huge need to meet famous actors, famous politicians, famous sports players. Okay, I've met a bunch of those kinds of people, and it's fine. They all put their pants on, one leg at a time. Yeah. You know who I want to meet? I want to meet the next emerging leader that's going to build the kingdom. I want to meet the next emerging leader who is so passionate that they want to learn how their heart works, and they want to be someone who changes the world.
Wow. Awesome. Good answers, John. Thank you so much again for playing that and being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast. I appreciate you, man. Wish you so much success in the future. Guys, go check out EdenBusinessConcepts.com. John and Dennis are going to take care of you. Thanks, John. It's a wrap today.
That's great to be with you, Brett. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.